Today, we're going to talk about veterans and what we've seen in the idea of trauma bonding. What Sean and I have seen, and what at least I get fired up about, is when veterans get together, and specifically in groups that want to get better, they end up just getting together and bonding over their trauma. And we don't ever see any like movement forward. It's just old war stories, and that's about it. Um, and I'm honestly straight up sick of it.
And right, it's not just the war stories that where the trauma's coming in, right? This also includes uh, any experience that was had while in service. So it's kind of crazy, right? I'll take the kind of out. It's crazy when I start looking at some statistics that a lot of people with PTSD aren't getting that from combat.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say trauma, and we'll provide some clarity, right? There's two different types of trauma that we see, right? Big T trauma, which is going to be like a very, very traumatic event. That could be something that you saw at war. It could be a car accident. If we want to look at, sexual assault, stuff like that, that's something that we would call big T trauma. And then there's little T trauma, which is more of like developmental trauma, stuff that you learned growing up. So wanted to clarify that just in case, anybody out there listening is thinking that it's only one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be some smaller experiences, what we would call smaller experiences, that we internalize, we make it mean something, right? And that turns around and it does, it traumatizes us, right? It's the stories that we're telling ourselves about those situations. So I wanted to clarify that for anybody listening.
Yeah. Um, I believe that trauma bonding happens because it's something comfortable. Um, Most of the time, change can be uncomfortable, and also can be smooth, and it can be butter. Most of the time, it's not. We know that. So when these veterans they get together, they talk about what's comfortable for them, and they always talk about trauma because that's what they live in. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. These alpha males, I'm speaking specifically for males, they don't want to talk about feelings. They don't want to talk about the shit that's going to get shit done and moving forward. So what they talk about is their good old fashioned war stories. And let's be honest, that doesn't get shit done. You got to get down there and dig into the weeds a little bit. So yeah, what we see a lot is these veterans groups talking same old shit, and they want to make everything better for everybody, preventing the 22 suicides. But if you're just in there complaining about your woe is me stories and not trying to figure shit out, yeah, you're going to get the same results. I hope that ramble made some sense.
Something that I'll speak into, Lance, is because a lot of people might be wondering, like, what is trauma bonding,
Yes, please.
right? So in the veteran community, right, like you talked about, the most common one is war stories, right? Something that we experienced in war. Uh, it had an effect on us, and how this typically plays out, or I'll speak into my experience. I remember coming back, right, combat arms, did a tour in Afghanistan, and I remember for the longest time as I came back, I chose not to really speak into it because the story I was telling myself is that nobody understands, right? So I would leave. I wouldn't communicate what I was experiencing to anybody who hadn't been in the military, and not only hadn't been in the military, wasn't in a combat position or didn't see combat, right? So I even filtered it even more down to, oh, if you didn't see combat, then we can't really have this story. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, this happened even as early on as I left basic training, reported to Fort Campbell, and I remember in processing, hearing people's stories about basic training and being vastly different than what my experience was as a Cav Scout, right? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, like you guys got to do this, you had that, like you guys got phone calls, all these different things. So I even found myself disconnected from them, and I gravitated towards people that had similar experiences. And so if we look at that through the lens of what trauma bonding is, right? We all have traumas, right? Big T or little t. Um, and the reason why we bond over that is because it is familiar, right? So there is this lens that might help some people understand what trauma bonding is. And that is, it doesn't matter, right? Good or bad, what the feeling is. It could be anger, sadness, frustration. It could be happiness, excitement, whatever. We're going to continue to seek more of what's familiar. And so when we meet people that have similar backstories as us, right? Or in this case, with veterans going to combat or anything like that, we're going to gravitate towards those who do have those similar experiences. And while in the process of sharing those experiences and sharing those stories, there is this sense of like, oh, they understand me, they get it, right? So we open up a little bit more, and we start to attract ourselves more to that because it's a familiar feeling. So through that lens, right, you can start to see how that could keep us stuck in those stories, right? I imagine everyone here that's listening has heard the phrase "misery loves company," right? And the reason
Yep.
for that is because we're going to seek what is familiar. So if we're in a shit story ourselves, right, we're going to find other people that bond with that. And so to put more perspective on it, this is how most of our relationships are formed anyways, right? This is how we relate to people. We find people who have similar stories, similar experiences, and those are the people that we tend to gravitate towards, not understanding or realizing that when we do that through the lens of like something bad happening, right, it's going to keep us stuck there. And
Mm-hmm.
to us in those moments, it feels good, right? We view it as like, oh, I'm being seen and I'm being understood, and so we seek more of that. And then this goes on for days, weeks, months, years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Insert any amount of time here. Not like it, and like we mentioned before, it's like, oh, we're still in the same fucking story, right? And this is if we want to broaden this scope a little bit more, think about anybody, veteran or not, and think about finances, right? People who have a lot of money tend to be attracted to other people who have a lot of money. People
Right.
who don't have money are attracted to people who don't have money because they have similar stories. Instead of, someone who doesn't have a lot of money and they're looking to gain more, instead of relating with people that don't have money, you should be seeking people that do have money, right? Because that's the direction that you want to go in. So
Right.
through that lens, we can help start to like narrow down, like, okay, cool, as a veteran, if I'm still experiencing something and I don't want to experience it anymore, why am I connecting mostly with people that have the same experiences?
Right.
Right? Trauma bonding.
Yep. A very good definition, very good explanation. What came to mind when you said that? I don't remember who told me this. Several people. Find who you want to be like and start doing what they're doing. Simple terms. Um, yeah, if you start looking at what people are doing, like you just said, hang out with people with the right mindset for money, hang out with the people with the right mindset for mental health. I'll just call it cognitive fitness. Find somebody that you look up to and start doing what they're doing because they've obviously got something together and they're doing something right. Um, One point you brought up, man, it just slipped my mind. Ooh, yeah. Talking to as many veterans as I do, this is getting off a little bit of topic from the trauma bonding, but many veterans, a lot of them think that, oh, nobody understands me. Oh, I'm by myself. And everybody that says that, I'm like, you're exactly the same as the other person that just said that. Like your story's a little bit different, but you're all going through the same shit. Dude, girl, whoever you are listening to this, you're not alone. there's hundreds and thousands of people, military, non-military, that are going through the exact same thing you're going to. Um, you're special, but you're not that special. um, yeah. So,
Yeah, and is it cool if I expand upon that a little bit?
oh, please do.
Um, while we're talking about trauma bonding, and so we're reviewing it through this light of healing. Would you say that's accurate, Lance?
Yeah.
Right, wanting to heal, wanting to grow, wanting to progress in our lives. Right, this is why we bring up trauma bonding and why this is prevalent and why it's keeping you stuck. What we're not saying is that your experience wasn't valid. Right, your experience is 100% valid. It happened regardless of the story you put on it. It's real. So even in that, like, what your feelings is very real. No one's going to discredit that, and if they do, smack them in the face and tell them to get away. So I want to bring that to light, so that way anybody that's listening to this, this isn't an attack, right? And this is working with the veteran population. It is a little bit more tricky, right? We have a lot of ingrained habits because, let's be honest here, no one's really put forth the effort to support veterans coming back, right? And this is through the lens of combat and also through the lens of service itself, right? It's not just combat. Joining the military in general is a very different life than what most people experience, and we can
Yeah.
acknowledge that, right? So when we talk about our experiences, there is a difference between bonding over it and acknowledging it, right? So that is a huge difference that I want to help people see, because you can acknowledge and acknowledge your experience for what it was, and you can share your stories. So we're not telling you to keep those stories in. What we're bringing light to is, cool, share your story, and then start to gain some awareness around why you're sharing it, right? What are the outcomes of you sharing that, right? Sharing stories can be very powerful. So it is a nice check-in.
I want to elaborate on that. Sharing it not to relive it and feel the guilt, shame, or whatever, but sharing it to move through it. And again, acknowledging it, like feeling it fully, and then move through it. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. That's the distinction, right? Where someone like you and I that have some background in doing some emotional work and some more cognitive work as well, right? There is a very clear distinction there. And so I've been a part of groups on, doing some emotional work and the cognitive work where they're very strict on getting away from the story,
Mhm.
right? And that's okay once you have some reps in, right? Because we can get stuck in our stories. And at the same time, sharing your story can be a very powerful moment to help you release what is there, right? And so I know one of my hopes is, especially talking about this topic, is gaining the awareness around that, so that way if you do find yourself sharing your stories again, it's like, okay, why am I sharing the story? Am I trying to relive this and keep me stuck in feeling, like you said, the shame, the guilt, whatever? Or am I sharing this to create space,
Mhm.
right? Because if we keep it all in, it's going to get stuck in the body, right? And I don't know how many people here are aware of what it means when I say that, and we can get into that in another
That's another
conversation.
topic.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Um, uh, Elaborate for others what you mean by creating space.
Yeah. So we can view this through the lens of, do we want to talk about energy?
Let's leave that. You know what? We'll let's just leave it. We've been talking for a while. Um,
Cool. All right.
Anything you want to say to wrap up?
Yeah. So creating space, we store everything in the body, right? Whether it's in the body or in the mind, right? So for someone who, let's say, has an overactive mind,